The White Rose is coming soon to Livonia Community Theatre, and today we're talking with director Olivia Deane and two of the actors, Catherine LaPointe and Steve Sedore, from this production. Thank you so much for joining me. How are you all doing?
Great. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for asking.
So, Olivia, you're currently entering into Tech Week. How has the rehearsal process been so far for everybody?
Honestly, it's been so great. It's been really, really smooth, I think. We added some extra days, or I put in some extra days at the beginning because it is winter in Michigan. And I thought, maybe put in some optional rehearsals in case something gets canceled because of the snow. But we've been really fortunate that all of our rehearsals have gone really, really well. I don't think that we've needed much catch up at all. And I've actually heard some feedback from some of the actors that they're like, I don't feel like we rehearsed this enough because they're used to rehearse more frequently. But the show's gone really smoothly, and I think everybody's hopefully feeling super prepared going into the Tech Week. I know as a director, I'm not feeling nervous about the show coming together.
As long as you're not nervous, we're not nervous.
I mean, that's truly like if the captain is steering the ship here and they're feeling okay, then the rest of us are just going to go with it.
Yep.
Yes, I'm very excited for this Tech Week and seeing it all come together.
So, Catherine, what kind of drew you to wanting to be a part of the show?
So I was just kind of really itching to do another show. I haven't done a show since I graduated high school 2 years ago. So this is like my first return to the stage. I love historical dramas. That's like totally my like favorite type of like play or any sort of media in general. So once I found out the Livonia Community Theatre was doing the White Rose, I was super excited and really once I learned more about it, I was even more excited because it's about a group of university students, and I'm a university student myself. So I felt like it was the right show for me at the right time. So I, was super excited to audition and be a part of the process and everything. So I'm really glad I got to, experience this so far.
Sounds like it was the perfect time to kind of lining things up to be the show that you get to be a part of again.
Yep, definitely.
Steve, how about for you? What drew you to the show?
Well, a little like Catherine, I haven't done a show in 3 years, but this story is actually very important to me. I've been a German teacher for 24 years at Ford High School in Dearborn, and when I was in Germany studying. Everyone in Germany knows the story of the White Rose, and it's very important to Germans. But it's not a story most Americans know Anne Frank, but there are a lot of stories that from that period that are not well known in America, and this is one of them. And so when I saw that Livonia Community Theatre was doing this, I thought, I have to audition because, like I said, this story is very important, I think, and I'm excited to get it out to different audiences.
Olivia, speaking of the story, what is the story of the White Rose? And then also, what drew you to wanting to direct it?
Yeah, so the story focuses on a group of university students who were university students in Nazi Germany. And they were Aryan. They grew up in Germany. They grew up through the Hitler Youth Program. So they were considered by society at the time to be very, quote unquote, good citizens of Germany by the government at that time. And throughout their university process, they learn about philosophy and ethics and things like that. And that made them go, hey, this doesn't seem to be right. What's going on? So even though several of them had been involved in the military and had even been deployed in World War II, they said, you know what, I can't stand by the things that I'm seeing in our world today. And that led them to steal a mimeograph home printing machine and start printing pamphlets in their apartment and start to send those out to the local areas that they went to. And essentially what the pamphlets were full of was anti-Nazi ideology. So to essentially convince their fellow Germans not to go along with the Nazi propaganda anymore, to try to throw the war effort from the inside. And the show itself focuses not only on that in sort of past, but also their interrogations once they were arrested. So it's a really interesting story and kind of fast-paced maybe in ways that an audience might not expect a show based on interrogations to be. I was drawn to directing it because back when I was in college over a decade ago, I had a professor who kind of got to know me through my acting classes and learned my style and things like that. And he said, "Hey, have you ever read this play? I think that this would be a really good one that you would enjoy." And so I read it, and it just like captured my whole soul. Something about it said, "This is really important, and I need to be a part of this story somehow." And the time just wasn't right at that point, and the time just continued to not be right. And then all of a sudden, the time was really right to direct it. And so I feel very honored to get to direct this show.
So this has been like a long time coming for you to finally be able to direct the show.
Yes, definitely.
So Catherine, who are you playing in the show?
So my character's name is Sophie Scholl. She is one of the 5 students that are producing these pamphlets. She's the only girl of the group, so she kind of is in a unique position because she's navigating, like societal expectations of what women should be doing at this time. But she's incredibly courageous, I would say, a little bit hot-headed, but also very like cerebral too, I would say. But also she's a very like youthful spirit too. She's a lot of youthfulness about her. She means a lot to me. Like the further I get more into like just analyzing her character, the more I see like similarities between her and me as well. I can really relate to her experiences. Well, not like her life experiences, I would say, but just who she is as a person. And she's such an interesting, smart, witty character, and I love playing her, and she's such an awesome character, so I can't wait to like bring her to life on stage and have other people see it too.
So what is your developmental process of a character such as this one?
Like how have I interpreted the character? What you're asking?
Yeah, like how do you kind of bring her from the page to the stage?
Okay.
Like how do you embody her?
I would say I put a lot of myself, I would say, definitely into her, especially like the stubbornness. But like just I've really like tried to imagine myself in the circumstances of Sophie and what I would be doing, and kind of applied my like rationale and how I would be doing things like through the lens of Sophie, if that makes sense at all. I've really spent a lot of time with this text, just like reading it over and over and over and over, and really just tried to, I guess, step into her shoes, but also like keep in mind what I would be doing as well as a 20-year-old university student too. So I don't know. Does that make sense?
No, it makes perfect sense. Sounds like you're
Okay.
using your lens of
Yes.
your life now to kind of interpret this character.
Yeah, definitely.
Steve, how about for you? Who are you playing?
I play Robert Moore, who is the head of the Munich Gestapo. Actually, my 14-year-old son, when I told him a little bit about the play and that it was about university students and I was going to audition, and he thought for a moment, he's like, "Wait a minute, Dad, you're too old to be a university student. Does that mean you're one of the?" And I'm like, yes, it does mean that. But I think it's one of the plays where it's hard for me to explain. But he is a complicated character, and that's really what it's been really fun digging into, because I think a lot of times people who worked in the Nazi regime are portrayed as just one-dimensional kind of monsters, and he has a lot more going on. He's a family man. He really sees himself less as a Nazi and more as a policeman, and he spends a lot of the last part of the play really trying to work through what he should be doing in this situation, given his job, and given that he grows to care for Sophie like a daughter. And so there's a lot of really good scenes that I've really enjoyed playing with Catherine that are really emotional and also complex. And I think they're going to be really thought-provoking for the audience.
And so where do you kind of begin your developmental process for this character then?
Well, I have 2 sons. I don't have any daughters, but there is it's very clear throughout that Moore sees, the character of Moore has a daughter, and he sees Sophie through that prism, and sees what she's doing and contrasts that with his own daughter and thinks about her actions and tries to help her in various ways that come through in the course of the play. And so, for me as a parent, there's a lot of that. And, also for me as a teacher, I've had a lot of students throughout the years and they feel like my children too as well. So there's that aspect, but there's also the aspect of a lot of the lines in the play really hit different given the current circumstances in our country. And so from that lens, it's been a difficult experience, but it's been really rewarding as well. And I really hope that audiences come with an open mind and will engage with the text and the characters and think about various issues and what they would have done in those circumstances.
That's an interesting question for you, Olivia. It's just like, being the director, being the one that's kind of has this vision for it. How do you handle kind of portraying like the resistance in a way that's still relevant? Obviously, it's still important for today, but without feeling like so heavy-handed or so like it's like so like on like weighing on your chest as you're kind of portraying this, or the audience is watching this.
Yeah, that's a really great question, because that's something that I think we've all had to wrestle with throughout this process. I think that I can give a lot of credit to the playwright, Lily and Garrett Groves, who wrote this play. The show came out in the 90s. So it was a very different world than politically from what we're seeing today. And I think the beauty of this play is that the goal is not to change anyone's mind with one night at the theater, right? But the goal is for people to interact with the show and then go away and think. And that's the beauty of it. So it's not something that I, as a director, have to wrestle with quite so much as maybe a play that is written to be, for lack of a better word, a little bit more preachy. It truly is a show that makes you go, okay, what would I do? And you're presented with a lot of different options, and it's really hard to look at the characters and say that they're all just genuinely wrong in the way that they're going about the world. They're written to be very relatable, all of them, which is one of the things that makes us think. I think we like to look back at that particular period of history, and we want to say, oh, all of these people were all wrong for all of the choices that they made, because that's easier for us. It's easier for us to not have to wrestle with it ourselves and say, what would I do if it were me? Because we want to just say, oh, I would be one of the good guys. But in a show like this, it really prompts you to go, okay, maybe I wouldn't have been. And here's why, because I can understand now why this person made it.
That's such an interesting conflict too, just because, everybody, he said these based off of real events, people all thought they were right in a way, and so like they're complex. Not everyone's black or white. There's a lot of gray areas here in which to kind of play with. And so with that, this also being the 83rd anniversary of the events that you're kind of taking the show over, Catherine, for you, how is that weight for you as an actor, telling the story on not just an anniversary, but also telling a story of a real person or like a real events?
I can't say how I'll feel on the act, because it's this Sunday that'll be the 83rd anniversary of the events of the show. I can't tell you exactly how I'll feel like when we do it. But I imagine it's going to feel kind of heavy, very heavy. Playing a real person is kind of difficult. I would say it's difficult, especially for me, just because I've tried to not really. I know there's a lot of media interpretations of Sophie Scholl out there, of just like movies that have come out across the years, and I've tried to really stay away from those, because I don't want to play Sophie how every other girl who's played Sophie has played her. I'm trying to, if someone wanted to see a specific version of Sophie, they'd go watch that version. I'm trying to really bring my own self to her and portray her how I would do it, not how anyone else would do it, in a way. And it's it's hard. It's definitely kind of hard, because I don't want to do her I don't want to, I want to do justice to Sophie, but also not do what everyone else is doing at the same time too. So, it's really sad too. It's hard to kind of shake the show off you a little bit too. When you're on stage and then if you come off stage, it's just like, so it's been kind of a challenge to connect with who I am, also connect with who Sophie is too. When I'm coming on and off stage too. So, I'm excited to see what's going to happen on Sunday, because it's going to be a very emotional day, but I'm sure it'll be a great show that day too, and really, really honor everyone who's involved.
And Steve, how about for you? What is kind of that weight or responsibility telling a story of real people?
That is something I think about a lot. And like I said, before I even auditioned, I knew a lot about this story. I've watched movies about it. I've read stories about it. And like I said, everyone in Germany knows the story of the Scholz. There are schools and streets named after them all over Germany. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it's a heavy responsibility to do justice to these people who really lived. And, I just am so thankful that Olivia, this story is very important to her as well. And she knows it so well, and really has clearly thought a lot about a lot of these issues. And that's been like, the rehearsals have been so rewarding in that regard, in the sense that, we've talked about these things and wrestled with them all, which has been really, really good. And I think that's going to come out. The audience is going to know that. They're going to know that we worked hard to try to do justice to these people.
And if I can build on that for just a second.
Sure.
I was actually just talking to my husband about this yesterday, about how, yes, we are telling a story that's based on a true story, but it's also very important to me that we acknowledge that it's not the true story. There are a lot of details that have been changed for the stage version. And so when I went into this process, when I went into directing this show, my main goal was to tell the story as it's written in the play. So even though we can recognize that these characters are based on the true characters, there's a lot of things that are different and have been changed. And so what we're telling is the story that is in the play, that is based on the characters, but it's not a history lecture. So I think sometimes when you get these plays that are based on true stories, sometimes you go in and it's so much focus has been put on the historical accuracy of it that you lose the humanity. And it was very important to me to maintain that level of humanity in these characters.
I mean, that's such a great way to kind of portray it, is that like all stories, especially removed so far in time, like we can't be 100% accurate without, again, becoming just factual, and becoming facts. Yeah. And so to have that humanity still built in there is important, because that's how people are going to relate to the show. And the message is honestly probably what's the most important,
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And that's sort of what I meant by doing justice to the characters. It's not just presenting, like Olivia said, a history lesson. It's kind of presenting some of their inner lives, or at least an imagining of their inner lives as well.
For sure. Olivia, so when you're kind of working through this, are there certain, especially with like your theater or like your stage, are there certain scenes that you were like, you had it one way and then they had to change over time as you're kind of rehearsing and developing the show?
Oh, 100%. Yes. Actually, as a matter of fact, there's a scene that tonight we have to reblock a little bit because of how the text played out. So it's definitely a living, breathing art form, as people say. And I think that's just one of the most incredible things, is that I can come into the rehearsal process and I've got something in my mind, and then one of my actors says, well, I have envisioned it this way, and we kind of find it together. I'm not a director who comes in and says, well, this is exactly how it's going to be. I like it to be a collaborative art form, because again, that's one of the most incredible things about theater. So it's fun. I think it's fun to work together and find that moment.
Because it truly does add authenticity to the show too, and everyone kind of has a voice in like you have the vision, and then everyone's like, oh, this is how we can kind of see it executing. So then one final question I have for all three of you, and Catherine, I'm going to start with you. Just what themes from the show really resonate the most with you?
For me, it's really the fact that they were all kids. Like, just the fact that this whole story, they were these just absolutely, what they were doing wasn't necessarily like this big magic, like event. You know, they were just printing pamphlets, and they were kids who had lives ahead of them, and you know, they had they were just college students, and I can really relate to that because I'm like, oh, I would be drinking with my friends right now, like in one of the dorm rooms or something. You know, like it's really the fact that they were these just so incredibly brave students who had they were I don't know. I'm trying to like put it all into words. Just, I don't know. Yeah. Like the fact that they were so young, but they did, they did so much, kind of, if that makes sense.
No, it's very inspirational, you know, like that they could do so much at such a young age and change history significantly.
Yeah.
Steve, how about for you?
Yeah. For me, I think a lot of the essential questions are what, as an individual, are you going to do when you're faced with a system that is unjust or with things that are clearly wrong? And that's something I think that everyone has to consider at some point or another, is what do they want to do with their lives, and how do they want to react to things that are clearly wrong? And you know, that's, and also I think that the distinction between a very young person addressing that question and then an older person who has a lot more in their lives that they could potentially lose, like their family and their job and that sort of thing, and what is their responsibility. And so these are things that I think about, and you know, I see them all playing out in the play. Oftentimes we'll rehearse and then something else will come up that I hadn't even thought about. So there's a lot in there, and it's addressed in a really thought-provoking way.
Beautiful answer. Olivia, how about for you? What really speaks to you from the show?
That's a really big, hard question. I've sat with the show for so long, but I think the one thing that keeps coming to mind for me is one of the major themes is time, and how each of us only has the time that we have. And the choices that we make are important to be made during that time that we have, because we're not given any extra. And there are a lot of themes that comes up over and over again about how when you have values, moral, ethical values, but you're not exercising them, just like your muscles, if you're not moving your body, they're going to atrophy. And that's something that they talk about a lot during the show, is that this is my time, or this is the time that we have, or time dictating things. And if you don't live up to those values, they're going to disappear, and you won't even realize it as that happens. You know, so I think that that's just one of the most beautiful themes of the show, is that we all have the time that we're given, and we have the decision of how we're going to use that in the world that we're placed in.
Another amazing answer. Thank you all three for being here. It's been such an exceptional time talking with the three of you, and we're so excited for the show to arrive.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you.
So The White Rose arrives at the Livonia Community Theatre on February 20th and runs through the 28th. So get your tickets now, and we'll see you there.